So here I was, just chilling, minding my own business, scrolling on Instagram instead of doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing, when my ears are assaulted by this man. Warning, this is going to be loud. Very loud.
I've been there, man. I've been there. I've tried it. I've tasted it. I was there. Any drug, any woman, any club, any car. I was.
Calm down, is relaxation. Chill out. Stop screaming.
Now, before we get into it, let me give you a little bit of background. This isn't very uncommon to see a bearded dawah man shouting and screaming passionately and slapping a sheet on top of it, and it seems inspirational to some Muslims. I don't know if it's just me, but it always seemed extremely cringy. They often seem to have this backstory of how they used to be players and they realized that this life is not for them and now they found the true way. But let's pause for a second and think about how it would have worked the other way around. Can you imagine a Muslim woman with a hijab on and everything telling people about how many drugs she's done, how many guys she's done, and getting a platform? Why is it that Muslim men get 1,000 chances to redeem themselves? For example, Andrew Tate. But women are kind of an open once before it's spoiled commodity. I swear, it seems like these men are either Andrew Tate or that, no in between. Let's watch the video.
I've been there, man. I've been there. I've tried it. I've tasted it. I was there. Any drug, any woman, any club, any car. I was there. I was seeing it, man. When I was 20, I was driving cars. You look at the magazines. And I was empty. Wallahi, I was empty. Going and coming and watches and cars and girls and women. But then what? Then what? What happens after that? There's an emptiness inside me. I'm lonely. I spend my life trying to please him and trying to please her and trying to fit in here and trying to fit in there. Allah is calling me and I'm turning my back on him. You're looking for happiness in all the wrong places. It's with Allah.
Now, it seems like he went through a lot, and I'm not making this video to invalidate his struggles, but I have some comments to make about this. I didn't ask for this. I was just scrolling on Instagram. He assaulted me with this speech. So now it's my turn. This is the kind of person who would assert that everyone is a slave to their desires. So if you're not a slave to Allah, you're a slave to something else, like sex or drugs or whatever else it may be. But he's obviously projecting. You hear this narrative very often. If you don't worship Allah, you must be worshiping something else, like yourself even. But just because you had that experience doesn't mean that everyone else is going to have it too. Just because you are so eager to find something to worship that you want to be a perpetual slave doesn't mean that everyone else wants to too. It doesn't mean that it's the default mode for humans. But a lot of Muslims are under the impression that everyone is a slave to something or another. So why not have it be the ultimate creator of the universe? It's okay to not want to be a slave. Slavery is bad. And this so-called creator of the universe has never proven himself to be here to ask us to be his slaves or make us be his slaves. So you're just a slave to an idea. You transitioned from clubbing and women and cars and watches to a sexist god. What is this beautiful, pure message that he's sending here when Allah promises women in houses and sex slaves and all of that stuff in heaven? He's just saying, delay all of that. Don't do it right now. Wait when we have the after party. Bro, I've tasted them all. If you think the bitches here are hot, just wait for the heavenly whores. That's pretty much what the average heaven enjoyer will be like. Andrew Tate, but in the afterlife. This message unfortunately does work, because there are a lot of men out there, Muslim or otherwise, who are lost, who are empty, who have no purpose in life. So this preys on the weak and vulnerable. Perhaps he truly means what he's saying. Perhaps he truly was miserable and he truly found salvation in God. It seems to be like very often is the case that every da'wah man has a tragic story behind how they became more pious. But just because he struggled doesn't mean that we can't pick apart the horrible ideology that he's promoting instead. Dawah men like him present the world as a dichotomy of two options. Either you want to be empty and go clubbing and drive cars and all that kind of stuff, or you be a slave to Allah. There's no in between. And maybe in his life there was no in between, but that doesn't mean that this is how the world really is. Instead of getting those men the help that they desperately need, they will now be sold on another sexist and horrible ideology. Now, again, I get that he went through a lot in his life, and this is not to invalidate that he was struggling, and maybe he's struggling less right now. But just because someone used to struggle and is passionate about something doesn't give them a pass to promote a harmful ideology. And for the love of God, stop shouting. It's not doing you any favors. I was in no mood to look up anything Islamic when this popped in my feed. And then a lot of believers have the audacity of saying, why don't you stop talking about Islam? Why don't you? The world would be a much better place if religious people just kept to themselves and stopped spreading their religion. And I've even made a video about this before. It would be evil to spread Islam. It's actually better for everyone if you don't spread Islam, according to the Islamic narrative. It would be better if people did not hear of your religion so they could be actually tested in the afterlife rather than, coming across a guy like this and thinking, this is batshit insane. Religious people have the luxury of being able to insult our ears with this kind of drivel anytime through ads on Instagram. So why shouldn't we have a platform where we talk about how annoying and possibly triggering and harmful this can be? Who's shoving what down the other person's throat? And this kind of screaming, this kind of passion is very harmful when it comes to a volatile ideology where it's not clear exactly what it is about Islam that a person supports. Do you support the sexist parts? Do you support the violent parts? Do you support the pacifist parts? You don't know till you actually speak to the person. So maybe stop shouting because you're not giving it a good reputation. And maybe recognize the irony in promoting an ideology that is supposed to replace your boredom of women and sex with lust for more women and sex in the afterlife. That was literally the main selling point. That is how Islam spread. Wars, promises of actual sex slaves in this life, and then more in the afterlife. How often does the Quran talk about Hur al-Ain and how pale they are and how big their breasts are? Why is that in a divine book? How is that a replacement for your boredom of sex in this life? Anyway, I was annoyed and I needed to make a short video about this. I'm sorry if you're annoyed too, but misery loves company. But I think it's good to be able to laugh about this stuff so we don't take it too seriously. Although it is a serious matter, it's just nice to distance yourself from the ridiculousness of it sometimes. If you're feeling empty and lonely, do not turn to an idea of a God that will probably cause you more harm than good. Put aside all the screaming and the shouting and the passion and actually think about what they are trying to sell you here. What is the merit of this religion? How does it prove itself to be true? Aside from the fact that it made this person's life better, allegedly. And if his life is better, why is he still shouting? Ultimately, the best way to combat such rhetoric is to think critically and think for yourself. I don't want her anywhere near you or your boys. There. I told her not to go to the club.
Attaboy. I'm just looking out for you. What? I mean, look at what she's wearing.